Hi, I'm Findlay Livingstone, the account manager for cybersecurity and identity and access management in the Nordics. And I'm delighted today to be part of the Empiric Insights, which is a video series where one of our team, like myself, sits down with experts across different specialities that we recruit for to hear their guidance and perspectives on influences shaping the industry. And I'm really pleased to be here today with Morey Haber, a chief security advisor at BeyondTrust. First off, Morey, could you please, for the benefit of our viewers, really give a bit of an introduction into yourself and obviously your background within cybersecurity?
Certainly. My name is Morey Haber. I'm the Chief Security Advisor at BeyondTrust. I've been with the organization for over 21 years now, so it's more of a career than just a job. Roles all the way from vice president to product management through the CISO for multiple years, the CTO, and now act as a forward-facing advisor to companies and governments around the world. And I stepped into this role from being a vendor practitioner based on public speaking, knowledge sharing, authoring 7 different books on cybersecurity, basically to help educate the community at large as to modern threats with identities and privileges.
Perfect. Thank you for the sort of the brief intro. I mean, in terms of, you've built a really long career, obviously, within cybersecurity and in particular, over 2 decades at Beyond Trust. What has that sort of experience taught you about obviously staying relevant in the industry, and also how the industry has changed over those, 20 plus years?
Yeah, when I started with BeyondTrust, it was actually one of their acquisitions back in the early 2000s, a company called EI Digital Security. Some of the audience may know who they are. They were a vulnerability management company doing vulnerability scanning, a product called Retina. And over the years, privileges, identities became more important, most recently in terms of attack vectors. We've seen that change from weaponizing vulnerabilities and exploits to having threat actors really find ways to log in versus hack in. It's actually easier. And that change and evolution has really been quite profound within the industry. A lot of my family is in the medical community, and they have to do CMEs every year, continuing medical education credits. And in many ways, cybersecurity is the same. Even though I've been with the same organization for 20 plus years, you constantly have to read, you constantly have to learn, you have to constantly find the new techniques, the new attack vectors, the new techniques that threat actors are using to compromise environments. And that's the key piece that allows you to stay relevant. So just like a doctor has to learn a new technique or a new drug or anything else, in cybersecurity, you've got to find what works best for you, whether that's reading, podcasts, videos, and stay. So even though my company has changed and my job has changed, being relevant is incredibly important. And it means you want to always be that sponge for knowledge and basically find ways that you consume information the best and then find ways of disseminating that back out. Because if you can't communicate what you've learned over time or within a business, then you basically are just doing a task and a job and you're never going to evolve yourself.
So it's the most important part is that constant learning, constant development of your skills, so you can stay relevant at the same time.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah, no,
much.
I think a really interesting insight. Within the cybersecurity space, one of the things that we quite often see is imposter syndrome, particularly within early careers. What would you say people tend to maybe misunderstand about expertise in the field of cybersecurity, and what would be kind of your biggest piece of advice from someone with 20, 30 plus years experience? What would be your piece of advice for someone looking to grow?
Imposter syndrome is real for starters. And for the community that doesn't know what it is, it's really a self doubt. It's, am I good enough to be on this stage or write or be the expert in this material? And one of the things that I've found throughout my career is you can never learn anything fully. You can never be the expert that has every piece of information on every topic. You become like that doctor specialized, whether it's heart surgery, brain surgery, ear, nose, throat, whatever it may be. And cybersecurity is the same. You can become an expert in a specific discipline like identity and privileged access, but you're still not going to learn every single thing end to end about it. And that's where imposter syndrome is so prevalent. You can study, you can read, you can do it, but you're always going to learn one piece more. And that piece of self-doubt that there's someone else that knows more or would contradict you or correct you really can burn on the inside. Why am I good enough if they're going to tell me something I already don't know and I'm supposed to be the expert? From a person that's dealt with imposter syndrome themselves, me, it's hard. I mentioned that I've written 7 books on cybersecurity, covering everything from vulnerability management to cloud attack vectors, identity privilege attack vectors, and most recently, a book on the history of cybersecurity and why we have the tools today. Someone may consider me an expert because I've written those books. I can tell you personally, I learn new stuff every day. Why didn't I include this cybersecurity incident in my latest book? What about the latest methods from Spiffy and Spire for machine identity authentication? I didn't include those in my last book. I chose not to, or you know what? It wasn't relevant, or I never even heard of it before. I mean, any of those conditions. Well, I would tell you that for younger teams dealing with imposter syndrome, learn as much as you can, but have confidence to say, I believe I know everything I'm supposed to, but there's still room for improvement. For seasoned veterans that still feel it, myself included, don't get complacent. Listen to other people, find ways of absorbing that knowledge to your first question so that you can stay as close to the pinnacle of your career as possible. Don't let that imposter syndrome get under your skin. It's quite hard, to be honest with you, but it is very real.
Oh yeah, of course. And I think it sort of goes hand in hand really with obviously what you said about obviously staying relevant, within the industry. That constant professional development seems to be, really important within the cybersecurity space. And I think obviously you've done it yourself. So it's probably a really good piece of advice for a lot of young people within the industry, who are getting started in their career to really focus on. Um, in terms of kind of on the flip side, with regards to hiring, it's really common. We see it, and obviously probably yourselves over the years, to see candidates that look strong on paper, but maybe struggle in roles, and others, are good fits, but need time to ramp up, as you say, to develop their skills. How do you think, hiring managers or businesses should really balance kind of, immediate capability, with, long-term potential?
Well, this is really an interesting segue because it goes to how much you've learned, that you have a lot of self-doubt, what you have inside and what you can communicate. You may look fantastic on paper. You've developed all these tools, you've done X, Y, and Z, you know the latest coding practices for security or AI or whatever it may be. But if you cannot articulate your knowledge to anybody else, if you cannot absorb new information without being abrasive, you only could look good on paper. The most successful sole contributors, not people that want to get into management as that new hire, but sole contributors basically can absorb information outwards without being disruptive or quirky to a point where it becomes an HR issue and continue to do their job over and over. If you want to get into management, then you have to deal with the people skills and everything above that. We can go down that path if you'd like. But I think the most successful people have taken imposter syndrome, to your earlier question, to a different place and going, you know what? I might have it. I might have it in the extreme, but I still can articulate with confidence what I know and have room for improvement and do my job well and fit into the culture of business. Now, this brings up one other additional point about new hires, and that is the culture of the business. If the business rewards people, is positive, has good intent, very little politics, most people of a technical nature will succeed to the nth degree. They will love it, feel it. Maybe it's why I'm with my company for so long. But if there's constant backstabbing and why did you leave 2 minutes before 5 and things like that, doesn't matter how good you are on paper or how good you articulate, that social culture of the business will basically force that employee to leave over time.
It's a really interesting point, and I think from our side, within that hiring space, quite often we'll get sort of, focus really, closely on the technical aspect. Like you say, people that look good on paper that might have the right experience or certifications, but a real important thing that, some people might miss when it comes to recruitment or hiring is that culture fit, like you say. I've spoken to a lot of managers in my time that actually would value, the culture fit over the skill set sometimes,
Mhm.
just because if they're looking to create that positive environment, like you say, where, they're going to be driving other team members in terms of growth, having the technical skill set is good, but actually having that team fit, that culture fit is, almost as important, if not more. I think in terms of that sort of, looking good on paper part, one of the things that we quite often see and is quite a very prominent in the cybersecurity space, is certifications. It's a visible part of, cyber career paths. But value of certifications is quite often debated within the sort of hiring space. In your opinion, Morey, when do certifications add real value, and when do they maybe actually not, and maybe become a distraction when it comes to hiring?
Certifications is an interesting problem in any industry, right? You're not going to allow a doctor to cut you open if he's not board certified. So let's take that as a anchor point for this discussion. Do you need a certification? There's an old internet lore story about a ship where they couldn't get the engine started, and many of you may have heard this story. The engine, for whatever mechanics it had, would not start. It could not start its prop. And they found a person that said, yeah, I can fix it no matter what. It doesn't work. And he goes over to the side of the back of the engine and smashes it with a hard hammer. And all of a sudden, the engine starts. And they're like, how, what, did you know how to do it? And he sent a bill for an obscene amount of money because he knew where to hit the hammer. What that tells us is, well, one, it's the experience. He knew how to hit it. It only took him 10 minutes and bang, and it worked, but no one else could fix it. And this is where certification versus experience becomes that interesting balance. A doctor cutting into you, you want him board certified. You want to know that he's done it. But someone who's done things 1,000 times and knows what they're doing from experience and practical work, like a good contractor or builder, may just have a license to do general contracting, but can do phenomenal interior work. The same is true for cybersecurity. This discipline is relatively new, 20, 30 years plus, maybe 40 at best, certifications in the last 10 or 20. And many people have just grown up in the industry and know what they're doing from experience. They know how to wield that hammer and they know how to discuss things with practical intent. But there's also newer or have got an extremely focused discipline, maybe on a specific tool set, maybe on an ERP system or network infrastructure or latency used for stock market, whatever it may be. You kind of want those people to know a little bit more, especially if they're providing you with professional services. If I'm going to hire a contractor to make sure that I can get less than a millisecond latency for a stock transaction, or to build a network globally that has got extreme high resilience, etc., the experience is important, but I would also want to know that the tools that they're putting in, routers, switches, networks, whatever, they are certified by the vendor to do so. Because I'm paying professional services. I don't want to have, oh, this guy's got 20 years experience, running a cable. Well, this guy's got the certifications, been doing it for 2 years and knows how to run that cable better. I'd go with the certification. So maybe in the long and the short, when you're paying for professional services or paying someone to do specific work, I believe certifications are incredibly important. If you're looking for the expertise to run daily business and things like that, when it comes to a tool, yeah, they've been trained on the tool, they're certified, but not always. Personally, as a CISO, I never looked for those certifications. I look for people that can demonstrate knowing how to do things and getting the job done well versus, yeah, I got a piece of paper with X, Y, and Z on the end of it.
No, so I think in terms of that, it's about the balance, really, like you say. Having that balance of experience versus certifications. There's some things, like you say, network infrastructure that, having those certifications is really important. Like you say, you wouldn't have a doctor perform surgery on you if they didn't have the right certifications. But at the same time, that experience is also, really crucial. I mean, looking kind of ahead, if you were to give a bit of advice, I think a big thing here at Empiric, and I think an important thing about this interview and this conversation is to kind of give some advice to maybe some junior IAM or cybersecurity professionals in particular. What sort of area would you kind of recommend as a focus really over the next few years, and in particular, you're seeing it in the same way that we are. The influence of AI at the moment is massive. What area would you say would be a point to kind of recommend young IAM professionals or cybersecurity professionals to really focus on over the next couple of years?
There are so many technology disciplines that are maturing, from identity to AI, really working at large with mobile devices, and mobile devices that can connect, whether that's through a satellite or cellular or Wi-Fi. You could pick any one of these disciplines and become that expert in it. But if I was to recommend to anybody in cyber or technology what they should focus on, I would actually say don't focus on that specific discipline. And I know this may sound a little, controversial. I would focus on yourself. I would focus on your own ability to literally shut up and listen when other people are talking, believe that you're always got the right answer, and be open to criticism. I believe that every individual in the technology space has got to always take a step back and go, that imposter syndrome piece might be real just a little bit because they have a piece of knowledge I don't. So I would encourage anybody in the technology space to learn how to embrace self improvement, learn how to take constructive feedback, and to an earlier question that you stated, learn how to communicate. Written, podcasts, whatever it may be, because whatever knowledge you consume as that discipline that you choose, somehow you're going to have to teach somebody else or communicate the design out, or go, look, we want to do the most secure satellite communications ever for these devices based on oil tankers. Let's take something controversial in the world today, and no one can break it. Okay, I'm the expert in oceanic communications to satellites. Do I know everything? I have to be able to communicate why my design and my expertise is better than anything else out there. So I really would recommend to anyone listening to this podcast, think about your own self-improvement. That's where you're going to succeed the best.
Oh, that's a really sort of different insight there, Morey. I think that's a really helpful thing for a lot of people, especially young professionals. And I think hopefully, obviously, maybe some young cybersecurity IAM professionals watching this podcast, seeing yourself, obviously, you said communication is such a really important thing. Seeing yourself, obviously, put yourself out there and speaking, about obviously the industry, might hopefully really inspire them to, do the same, or try and get into that area. Because I think, you're obviously a very good example of, that development within the cybersecurity space.
But that's a,
Just to
that's
kind
a,
of
not to interrupt you, but that's a very, I mean to interrupt you, but I don't mean to, because it just contradicts what I just told you. There's two ways of doing that. It's public and internal. I chose the public route, and it has its own risks. When you become a public persona, people will comment on you, and you have to have a thick skin to handle it. And believe me, there's some wild stuff about me on the internet that go way beyond this podcast. You don't have to do that.
Yeah, I think that's a definite good point. So you don't have to go public, but it's more that internal development with regards
Exactly.
to speaking.
Yeah, it could be talking to your manager or your peers, or going to communities and groups and things like that. You don't have to hang yourself out there public. But when you do, you're almost like a politician. You have to be prepared for the criticisms and critiques. And I get not everyone wants to be there, and not everyone's built to do that. And it can be very hard.
Of course, no, I think you're spot on there. Just to kind of wrap up, really, is there anything that we've not covered, anything that we've not gone into that you think maybe any hiring managers, any senior managers who are in the cybersecurity space, or young cyber professionals should better understand about developing their career, building out teams within the cybersecurity space?
I think that there's a lot of issues with the cybersecurity space in terms of hiring and firing or leaving, that hiring managers have to consider. When you consider identity and access management, you have the standard identity governance, joiner, mover, leaver workflows. That's someone comes on board, they change roles, and they leave. As a hiring manager, I did not like leavers at all. I would, if there was no issue with the person, HR, performance, etc., I always tried to get them into the mover slot because the amount of time that it takes to ramp someone out for culture, technology, implementation, strategy is 6 months plus in any business today, existing business. It's not like you can drop them in as a sales development representative, pick up the phone, here's your script, start pounding the phone, and within a month or 2 months, they should be available. When you're in cybersecurity for a business, it can take a lot longer, especially the larger businesses, because of the complexity, the rules, the policies, the nuances, and everything else that's there. If a person's unhappy, I'd rather move them. And actually, I find moving them to be quite beneficial so they don't become stale, they don't burn out, they're learning something new, they're being challenged with something different. And then they slowly become business experts because they've touched multiple disciplines within the company to grow within your department. So if they started on the help desk or authentication and then went to network or whatever it may be, that mover piece becomes critical. Again, as long as there's no performance or HR style issues. When they leave, then you have that void. All of that knowledge, all of that ingrained that they have just disappear. You bring someone new in and they have fresh ideas, but they don't understand why, who, what. And it doesn't matter what communications or writing they've done, it never conveys the same sentiment. To hiring managers for identity, especially, why did you set that up that way? Unless you're actually communicating with someone, it's very difficult to give just basically going, oh, here's the settings and policy. I get it or I didn't get it. So I try to encourage professionals in this industry, make this more of your career. Then I was at this company for 6 months, went to the next company a year, another company a year and a half. Yes, you may have experience across everything, but you really don't understand the fundamentals of how a business operates because you've never been there long enough to see the gears work all the way through a cycle.
So it kind of goes back to that previous point we discussed in terms of maybe giving people a little bit more time to obviously ramp up their skill set, work out how they best fit and best provide for the business. But then also on the flip side, that the specialists, they need to give themselves some time within a business to really understand how a business works and actually kind of build up that experience side.
Exactly. So I can give you two real case studies without names. The first one is a gentleman that literally started on the help desk for clients. And he, phenomenal, I mean, phenomenal help desk resource. But he got bored. He got burnt out. The phone call every day, it's hard, especially if a client gets angry, which you never want an angry client, but once in a while it happens. And if you're just not in the mood that day, it's very difficult to put that smile on every single time. They expressed an interest in a different department and they were moved. They started setting systems up and hardening them because they understood hardening from their days of being on the help desk. They took that to another level and started doing certifications. And now, at their newest role, they're actually running teams to verify threat hunting exercises. Phenomenal resources, but that mover did some lateral movements and then elevated and communicated and has been with the company for a very long period of time. Another person started in finance, phenomenal finance person, spreadsheets to the nth degree that, okay, I could get any piece of information I wanted from budget and expenses at any given time. Well, she took it upon herself to learn how to code, and now she works in development, helping build very complex reporting, mover process, knowledge that's industrial to the company and helping them succeed and grow is better than saying, you know what, we don't need that finance person anymore from AI. Because of AI, the AI can build that spreadsheet. Why lose that knowledge if there's another role that they're willing and feeling challenged to take, and they already know the people in the company and the culture and everything else? So I always think of it as, is there a mover that's better than a new hire? And would that fit better than just basically terminating and hiring new?
Yeah, definitely, and hopefully that will maybe inspire, on one side the consultants or the sort of the specialists that you said to have that confidence to be able to make the switch, make the move from one department to the other, but then also maybe inspire some of the hiring managers and the managers to actually have the sort of take the risk and have the confidence to let one of their consultants or move one of their consultants within a department to another area. Hopefully that will have a big impact on them. Well, I really appreciate the time, Morey. really appreciate sitting down with me. Hopefully that this will have a really positive impact on a lot of the people viewing. And yeah, really thank you for your time.
You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today. Take care.
Take care, Morey.